Welcome to Close to Home with Nicole Sullivan.
Welcome to Close to Home with Nicole Sullivan. I'm your host, Jon Clemence. Nicole, a lifelong Mississippi Gulf Coast resident and experienced attorney, shares her legal insights on everything from real estate to estate planning, bringing clarity to a complex field. So in this episode is New Chapters, New Plans, Why Major Life Events Should Trigger an Estate Plan Update. So first of all, Nicole, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk with you. These are important things that I think a lot of us don't know enough about. So it's great that we can have this discussion and help people learn about it. So let's dig right in. Nicole, when is the right time to revisit or update an estate plan?
I think there's never an exact timeline. I think it's a great idea to review your estate plan yearly, but big life events, for example, birth or even death of a child, a divorce, marriage, those type of situations are great times to especially review them. It may not be that your estate plan actually needs to change at all, because most of the time I feel like estate planning attorneys, including us here at Sullivan Law Firm, we like to make sure that your estate plan can ebb and flow with the differing situations that you encounter throughout life. However, I would probably look at it, every year or so, and especially in those situations of divorce, marriage, childbirth, or unfortunately a death of a child or a spouse as well.
Yeah. Okay, so an estate plan isn't like a set it and forget. It's not like a crock-pot recipe. You have to come back and like update it and look at it.
Right. It's not something you always want to look at. Sometimes people have this thing about looking at your will and your estate plan because no one wants to think about death. But death is inevitable, and there are times that you just have to review it again.
So you talked about major life changes affecting estate plans, so marriage, divorce, birth of a child. How exactly could these situations impact someone's legal documents?
There are many times that the situation doesn't impact the documents at all. However, I would consider a divorce very important to consider when going back and reviewing your estate plan and making changes, because in a divorce, many times when people put together a will, their intentions are that everything goes to their spouse and then to their children should their spouse predecease them. But of course, in the case of a divorce, that generally changes. So that would be a great time to reflect on that. Another time would be, let's say you have adult children that have children, and unfortunately, one of those adult children has passed away. You need to review and revise and decide whether or not you would like that deceased child's children to then inherit from you. So that's a good time to review, make sure that your opinions or the situation or the circumstances haven't changed enough that you want to change that. So I would say those are two of the most important situations to review and revise pretty quickly after those situations occur.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I just actually someone in my family just passed away and had the same issue. Like there's a house and now where does the house go? And no one really knows. So,
Right.
to get out ahead of that issue, I think would just lessen the stress in that situation.
Exactly. And that's the whole point of estate planning is it's a reliever for the person that is creating the will and the estate plan, but it's also very helpful, and it keeps the family really a unit once you have your wishes put down, so that there's not those questions that come up if there's not an estate plan. So it really is something that's beneficial to your children or your grandchildren or whomever your estate is going to. It's super important to put that together just to have peace of mind for yourself, but also to know that you're taking care of whomever is inheriting from you.
Yeah, and I think that's a big positive. That's a big benefit not a lot of people think about. They don't think about these, your family is already under stress and now they have to make these big decisions too. Like give them that gift. Have
Right.
that estate plan, have it up to date. So what are some specific updates that people often overlook after a big life event?
The ones that I, again, want to hit on specifically are going to be in the situation of divorce or a death of a child. Many times, the most important thing to revisit is going to be the deed to your home and how you have the tenancy on that deed created to know what's going to happen at your death. So kind of like the example that you gave on people didn't know in your family where a certain home would go upon the death of someone, if we put that in your deed or create a deed that handles that, that is something that will really help and benefit your heirs or beneficiaries upon your death.
So let's talk about risks as well, because we've talked about, putting your family or loved ones in a better place by having these estate plans. But how about other risks? Are there like financial or legal risks if they don't update their plans over time?
The most important thing to consider when you talk about risks are going to be the things that we can't cover in your estate plan. So we try our best to make sure that all situations and circumstances are covered. But the biggest risk is, let's say you don't have something written down exactly as you want it. So you've told your daughter that you want everything to go to her. However, if you don't have it written down in a legally correct way, the courts then can't follow through with those wishes. So deathbed discussions are super important. However, they're only as important as the conversation that you have emotionally with your child or whomever you want your estate to go to. So it's very important to have everything written down, even if it is just in your own handwriting. So it's an important thing to consider, but it's great to just go ahead and think about the future early and make sure that you have everything covered so that you don't have those risks moving forward. Because again, the biggest risk is that your wishes aren't followed by the court, because we have certain rules in place, statutes that we have to follow, that if you pass away without a will or having something written down, then there's a certain way that things go. And if that's not the way that you want them to go, it needs to be written down.
That's right. Tough luck. No, write it down.
Unfortunately, that is the case sometimes. Tough luck.
Yeah, so we want to avoid that. How about changes in property ownership? Like you buy a home, you sell a home. How does that factor into estate planning updates?
The most important thing to me is tenancy on the deed, where the title is being transferred over to you in a situation where you are purchasing a home. So many times the deed is not something that the estate planning attorney or the title company goes over with the buyer of the property, because the buyer is not the one signing the deed. The deed is being signed by the person that once owned the property and is transferring it over to the buyer. So to me, it's really important when I sit down at a closing table, I like to review the deed with the person purchasing the home to go over the tenancy, to say, you are taking title as joint tenants with the right of survivorship, or you are taking title as tenants in common. And here's how these two different types of tenancy affect you and affect you upon your death. So again, while you're not the one signing this deed, the seller is signing it. It's most important for me to go over it with you, because many times the issues come up if that deed has not been reviewed with the purchaser. So even though the purchaser is not signing that document, there's so many documents that purchasers sign at a closing table. This is not one of them, but this is one of the most important ones to go over. And I think that as a buyer, when you go to purchase a property, make sure to ask the closing attorney or the closer that's handling the process, hey, can I see that deed before it's finalized? I want to make sure I'm taking tenancy as I would like it.
That's a good tip. Yeah, I know I've bought a couple homes in my life, and you're right. It's a stack of 1,000 sheets of paper. I don't know what I'm signing. I'm just signing. They said sign it. So
100%. And again, it's not even something that you're signing. So it's really important, because here in Mississippi, we have different tenancy laws than say Texas or New York or Tennessee or even Alabama next door to us. So it's really important that your closing attorney reviews the deed with you, and make sure to ask for that review, even if it's not something that they would typically go over with you.
yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about reviewing paperwork and stacks of documents. It makes me think about the process of trying to update legal documents. And I'm sure most people probably think it's going to be super expensive and super time consuming. Is that the biggest misconception people have about that?
Absolutely. The time, the expense, and I'm not saying that estate planning is the cheapest thing that ever existed. However, it is super important to have that insurance. I mean, you have to think about it from insurance. Insurance is going up every day. And
Is
it
it?
is getting
I had
extreme,
noticed.
or it's already there. So think about this as it relates to, insurance once you've passed away, to ensure that your wishes are taken care of, not necessarily that your property is covered from, wind, fire, hail, whatever it may be. Think about your estate plan as insurance for your wishes upon your death. And I think that it's very important. Typically a one-time fee. Again, if there's some kind of update, yes, there's going to be an additional expense. But for the most part, it's a one-time thing. It's not nearly as complicated and as burdensome.
So if someone hasn't looked at their estate plan in several years, I'm not talking about me, I'm up to date on everything, someone else, what's the first step they should take today?
First step, I would say, is just to review your estate plan on your own. So pull it out. I'm sure it's in a drawer packed away somewhere. Pull it out, review everything. Think about what's happened in the last year. If there have been any life changes, if there has been anything that you can think of, for example, death of a child, divorce, birth of a child, marriage, any of those things. If the big things have happened in your life, then you need to come see us. We'll do a quick review. We'll tell you if there's anything that needs to be updated, but we'll also tell you if there's not anything that needs to be updated. We're not those kinds of attorneys that always, want the cash flow coming in. No, we're here to do what's best for you. And if you don't need an update, then you don't need an update. But we're happy to review those documents with you, even if you just have a simple question to be answered. And sometimes that answer can happen over the phone. So phone call, email, whatever it may be, we're happy to review those things. But I think most importantly is just to pull it out, take a quick review on your own, read over it, and you will know pretty generally, you'll have an idea of if you need to visit with us to see if there's something you need to change.
Nice. Well, that's great advice. Nicole, thank you so much for coming on today. And it's just been super helpful for me, and I know others, to just learn a little bit more about this important thing called estate planning. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Close to Home with Nicole Sullivan. To connect with Nicole and the team, visit Sullivan Law Firm, PLLC.com. And if you liked what you heard, leave a like, subscribe, leave a review so we can share this with even more people. And with that, have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.